that plague the black community, from high incarceration rates to low graduation rates to high out-of-wedlock birth rates, which, by the way, what a huge issue. Out-of-wedlock birth rates. That's something that we should all be so concerned about.
Alrighty, what you just heard there was a clip of Anna reading from this female named Schaefer Riley, I guess, or Riley. She was fired about a year ago. She was some type of a blogger, educator, and she basically shots fired at black academia, which in reality I agree with everything she said. She read off some of the issues that should and need to be talked about in black academia, which obviously are not. Black PhD, 50% of black PhDs are in academia, which has absolutely no market value and is oversaturated. So people spend all this money, go deeply into debt, have this degree, and then get mad when they can't find jobs, and they feel that it has absolutely no market value. Anyways, when it comes to that situation, I agree with her. But you're gonna listen to this is the narrative from the left, though. It's not that fatherless homes and fatherlessness and all that stuff is the cause of these inequalities or injustices or what have you, right? Their logic is it's money and it's economics. It's not that having a child out of wedlock, and which can cause you to not go to school in some cases or put more burdens on you that you cannot handle, and it sets you up for failure. But again, that's not the leftist narrative. That's not liberal logic. Their logic is it's everything else. It's society. It's institutional racism. It's ABCD. It's everything else but fatherless homes, right? So that's what they say. So I want you to listen to this clip of them pretty much trying to downplay the effects of single motherhood on society.
It's very interesting.
And I love how when she talks about the black community, one of the 3 issues that she mentions is babies born out of wedlock. Like, that's real. Like, you black people need to find a way to solve that problem. Like, that's what
and she looks at it as a race problem instead of an economic problem, with every single other study, data points to it always being an economic issue. You know, it's across the board with poor people. It's across the board with lack of access to reproductive choice. It's across the board a lack of access to education. It really doesn't have to do with race.
This is the chick that got fired, Naomi. I don't think she made it about race at all. I think she was pointing out the elephant in the room. We can blame all these other disparities in situations, but if you break it down to core value and you compare mother and father homes compared to single parent homes, there's drastic differences in the behavior of the children. Again, this is the part that leftists want to ignore. They celebrate, they praise, and they put on pedestals single motherhood. And they keep bringing up exceptions to the rule, but when you break them down logically, Bill Clinton, the man giant in chief, Obama, they're not really exceptions. They both were born in wedlock, but that's a different story. But anyways, this is the problem. But therein lies the problem, that left won't see single motherhood, single parenting as a problem in itself. Yeah, they will throw salt on the wound for the fact that the father's not there if he's not providing financially. They'll throw that at him, but they don't really think that it's a bad thing, because they promote and teach women that it's empowering and that they can do it by themselves. And that's a big problem, and that's the issue.
Troubling numbers we uncovered. 86% of African American homes in Richmond are single parent households.
The story is getting a lot of attention online, so we decided to delve deeper into the issue behind the stats. Joe St. George tells us how it affects all of us. Joe.
Father's Day is just a few days away, and while some of us prepare to buy golf balls or new ties for our dads, the truth is many children have no father to buy things for, leaving many children not only with broken hearts, but with increased odds of getting into trouble.
I'm over here. Come on.
Richmonder Sean Powell loves being a dad to little Jalen.
Keep going, faster, faster.
Whether it's cheering him on while he's playing or helping him tie his shoe.
Most rewarding thing about it is just seeing him grow.
But dads like Sean have quickly become a minority in the city of Richmond, where the First Things First Foundation reports 60% of all births are to single moms. In the African American community, the numbers are even higher, with 86% of all births taking place when the mom is not married. Sean says that doesn't mean all of those dads are gone all the time, but it does mean many Richmond children are growing up fatherless.
That's basically what's in our culture right now. You're just having baby mamas or baby daddies.
But this fatherless generation has become more than just a family problem. The U.S. Department of Health and the Justice Department report 63% of all youth suicides and 71% of all high school dropouts are from fatherless homes, with 70% of all incarcerated juveniles having no father in their lives.
Many of the young folks that we interact with don't have a father in their home.
Henrico Police Chief D.A. Middleton telling us it's a major contributor to crime in Virginia, with his department stepping up efforts to have his officers become the role models many youths never had.
I think the role model part of a police officer's job is an important part of his job.
For African American women like Carlene Sneed, raising children on their own is a way of life, something she says goes all the way back to slavery, when moms and dads couldn't be together.
It just carried on from generation to generation.
Huh? What? So you telling me that this out of wedlock birth rate thing goes back to the 1700s? Really? So the out of or single motherhood was at 80% back then, and it just keep escalating? All right, never mind. I'm gonna let my man Thomas Sowell refute this nonsense and this ignorance.
Was a result of policies begun in the 1960s. This is not a legacy of what happened 100 years before the 1960s.
The breakdown of the black family is not a legacy of slavery.
No, if you the classic study of this goes all the way back to the era of slavery.
Throwing up your hands in despair, what is to be done?
The first thing to be done is to understand that this was a result of policies begun in the 1960s. This is not a legacy of what happened 100 years before the 1960s.
The breakdown of the black family is not a legacy of slavery.
No.
Aside from throwing up your hands in despair, what is to be done?
The first thing to be done is to understand that this was a result of policies begun in the 1960s. This is not a legacy of what happened 100 years before the 1960s.
The breakdown of the black family is not a legacy of slavery.
No, if you the classic study of this goes all the way back to the era of slavery, and they find that most black kids, even under slavery, had lived with two parents, and that was true all the way up until the 1960s. And so if you really want to find out what's changed, it has changed since the 1960s. And the fact that whites now have a higher rate of illegitimacy than blacks had when Moynihan wrote suggests that this is something that spreads out. But if you look at something else, if you look at those blacks, look at black husband-wife families, the poverty rate among such families has been in single digits every year since 1994. And so if you look at the external causes, why the husband and wife families and the welfare single mom families all are facing the same society and objective things, but the results are radically different because the cultures and values are different.
Slavery, when moms and dads couldn't be together.
It just carried on from generation to generation.
But dads like Sean says it doesn't have to be that way today. It's why he teaches a daddy boot camp class. It is why he has a simple message to the future dads of Richmond.
I would just say to that young man, just be prepared to help out. You know what I mean? It's not all about him anymore.
Now we should mention that Sean's boot camp for new dads is available for all dads, not just African American fathers, because it's an issue that is growing across all demographics. A link is on our website, WTVR.com. Steph.
Oh yeah, I love how he said that at the end. Yes, this situation affects the black community overwhelmingly disproportionately, but it's not the issue only. Like he said, it's not just indicative to blacks. It's a growing trend in America, which is my point that I've been trying to make, that what happens when the rest of America looks just like this. You do have the other forms of single parenting that's promoted by the left. The affluent white woman who wants to have a baby because she feels like she needs a new pet. The young chick who just graduated from college and she thinks she got everything in order and she's not married yet, so she says, I just want to pop out a baby because, well, just because. This is the other forms of single motherhood that we rarely ever talk about, and it's a growing trend. And the question is, what does America look like when the rest of America looks just like the black community? Oh, but since we're talking about it's not just a black issue, check out what's going on in the UK. Notice that, now this is the UK now, the leftist woman right here, she gives a disclaimer and says that, yeah, single parents, it happens here, most of them are okay. What? Then she goes to this narrative of, a lot of kids aren't getting the emotional support they need from the fathers. Alright, cool. But then she says, the scandal is the lack of maintenance, or as you would say, child support. And I said, the only thing that the left normally cares about when it comes to a single parent household led by females is the lack of support, financial, not the mentor or the emotional effect that it has on the kid, but just the financial part.
Without a dad than anywhere else in the country, according to today's report. Here in the Riverside ward of the city, 65% of households are led by single mothers. It all contributes to around 1 million children in England and Wales who are growing up without a father in their lives, according to researchers. Fatherlessness, says the report, can lead to higher rates of teenage crime, pregnancy and disadvantage. Not only are many children raised without a dad, some have no male role models at all. A quarter of primary schools, for instance, have no male teachers.
We've got this emergence of, in certain parts of the country, kind of men deserts where children are growing up and they don't really see many male role models through the younger years, and that's a growing phenomenon, and it's, we've got to ask ourselves a question about whether that matters, and we really believe it does matter.
Researchers say there will be more than 2 million lone parent families by the time of the next election, but they accuse the government of doing nothing to tackle what they call a tsunami of family breakdown. David Cameron, they say, has failed to pursue any policies promoting family stability. A Number 10 spokesman said the government was delivering on its promise to support families and had provided £30 million to prevent family breakdown. Michael Buchanan, BBC News.
1 million children in Britain are growing up with barely any male influence in their lives, thanks to the increase in single-parent families and the lack of male teachers at primary schools.
A study from the Centre for Social Justice found that in some parts of the country, 3 in 4 families were headed by just one parent, while 80% of primary schools have fewer than 3 male teachers.
Well, joining us from Gingerbread, a charity which supports single parents, is Caroline Davey, and Sean Bailey is a former special advisor to David Cameron on youth and crime, who himself grew up in a single-parent household. Caroline, to you first. I mean, when you look at the figures that have been released in this report, 1 million children growing up in the UK without a father, more likely to have a television in their bedroom than they are to have a father at home. And in one area of Sheffield, 75% of households headed by a single parent, most commonly a woman. Why is this happening?
Well, let's take a reality check here. 1 in 4 families with children in the UK is headed by a single parent. That proportion has barely changed in over a decade. We know that the vast majority of single parents do a great job and their children turn out absolutely fine. 2/3 of those kids do have regular contact with their other parent, normally, but not always dad. But we do share the concern that there are children who aren't maintaining that relationship with their other parent. They're not getting the emotional support that they need and deserve, nor are they getting the financial support. We think it's a scandal that so few children in single parent families receive child maintenance from their other parent. And we think that work does need to be done to address that fact and support all children and all families, regardless of whether they're still together or...
Because part of the left is liberated fembot nonsense is that women don't need men, and women can do a good job, which is by themselves, which is what she said in the beginning of her segment.
I mean, it may be sad or not desirable, but if it's not having a bad outcome on society, then in a sense it's something we might have to live with, the absence of fathers.
I think it's having a bad outcome. I think if you're a government, you have to figure out at what point can you intervene in someone's household. Clearly, you cannot make a couple stay together. But I think financially, you can make a parent stay with a child, and there's policy levers you could pull on that. And if you're bringing up if you're a single parent raising a 14-year-old boy for a lady on your own, you will find that tough. There's no doubt that having an extra pair of hands, an extra pair of male hands, will make a great difference to that child's behaviour and then his outcomes in the future.
Do you think there is that danger, particularly with male children, if there's an absent male role model?
Well, we know that parenting is a really tough job, and single parents do tell us it's even harder when you're bearing that burden and doing the job of both parents on your own. But we also know that children get male and female role models from all kinds of areas. It's not just necessarily fathers, but extended family, other people in the local community. And I think we need to look more broadly at the support that families are getting, increasing that where that needs to happen, but not being as melodramatic, I'm afraid, as this report is painting a picture.
Damn, I don't get this narrative or this notion of playing both roles. To me, that is foreign. It doesn't make any sense. In fact, because you can't play both roles, I've never heard a man say that nonsense. Most men that I've ever heard says they're a single father of daughters say, you know, they dread not having that female mother in their children's lives. They want to be remarried if their wife dies or something happens to them. They want that female companionship or just the relationship for their children's sake. But I don't get that notion at all. In fact, when my mother and stepfather divorced, my mother was what you would call a single mother for a period of time, and she didn't play both roles. In fact, because she had to become the main provider, she didn't do her role, the nurturer, the encourager, things of that nature. And that's a reality that never gets talked about. You look at it like this. In the media, we keep hearing all these statistics and stats of how well black women are doing, but black men just suck. And in this narrative is they have all these degrees and all these accomplishments, but you don't see it trickling down to their children. Or could that be a part of the problem? So you're saying that you have this degree, you have accomplished this, you have, you know, X, Y, Z, but your children are having the highest rates of STDs, the highest rates of pregnancies, the highest rates of incarceration. This has all happened under your watch, right? You can't blame the person who's not there. You're here, and you can't have it both ways. When that kid comes out good and say, yeah, I'm a single parent, I did it. But when that kid comes out bad, oh, it's because the father wasn't here. It doesn't work like that. You can't get those kudos. So back to the question. If you're doing fine and great and dandy as a single woman and all independent and what have you and whatnot and got all those accomplishments, how come it's not trickling down to your children? And I'm specifically talking to the single mothers on that situation. How come we don't see it? Anyway, just the reality is you cannot play both roles. You can play your role and that's it. Trying to play both roles means you're not playing your role, which means that kid is even worse because not only do they have an absent father, but they have an absent mother as well. A lot of times you have one or two narratives. You have the strong independent career goer or in female who has to be that for her child to provide because the father's not there or because she had bad decision-making skills and who she chose to lay with, and he's not there. So she has to do what she has to do, right? But in the process of doing that, she's sacrificing being a mother. So how is she playing both roles? She's not. Or you have the chick that's just a ratchet female all around. She's not working. She's collecting the government assistance, and she's still not being in that kid's life. She's still setting bad examples, having the wrong kind of people in a lot of her life around her child. It's just a negative situation across the board. But anyways, get rid of this whole doing both jobs. You don't do both jobs. You can't do both jobs. You're gonna suck at one or not be efficient at both. The brother right there, logical, rational, reasonable. The leftist chick on the left of him, not so much. Again, she's trying to say it's poverty, it's this, it's that, yada, yada, yada. The brother boy was all down to saying, yeah, but the chances of you being in poverty increase largely by coming out of one of those homes, which you keep making excuses for. And he's correct what it all boils down to. This situation is happening in the UK. You don't have the excuse or defense of slavery, institutional racism, but you do see the same problem. So what does that tell you? It's not about race. It's not just about economics. It's about culture, morals, and values. And when you don't have any of those things, we see chaos.
Tell our kids that before they have babies, they ought to think about getting married to someone. That's a great idea. But gosh, to tell our kids that before they have babies, they ought to think about getting married to someone. That's a great idea. Gosh, to tell our kids that before they have babies, they ought to think about getting married to someone, that's a great idea. But gosh, to tell our kids that before they have babies, they ought to think about getting married to someone, that's a great idea. But gosh, to tell our kids that before they have babies, they ought to think about getting married to someone, that's a great idea. Because if there's a two-parent family, the prospect of living in poverty goes down dramatically. The opportunities that the child will be able to achieve increase dramatically. So we can make changes in the way our culture works to help bring people away from violence and give them opportunity and bring them in the American system.